It's time for another NFL recap by yours truly. Let's go! Cardinals versus Seahawks on Thursday Night Football. This was a surprisingly entertaining game between two NFC West teams that are both birds. How crazy is that? But anyway, Seattle had controlled the game for the first three quarters, and then Arizona finally woke up after committing two turnovers. One was not Kyler Murray's fault, as Marvin Harrison Jr. bobbled the ball, which turned into an interception, and one was overthrown for an interception, which was Kyler Murray's fault. But in the fourth quarter, Arizona finally got things going, where Marvin Harrison Jr. scored an incredible touchdown against Devin Witherspoon to make it a one-score game. And then Arizona scored another touchdown to tie it at 20. And then Chad Rylands messed up everything for Arizona, setting up the Seahawks for an easy chance to get into field goal range and set up Jason Myers for the game-winning 52-yard field goal as the clock hit 0 to give Seattle a 23-20 victory. And also, Cardinals fans, one more thing. Stop blaming Chad Rylands, okay? It's not his fault that you guys lost this game. Your defense had multiple chances to keep Seattle out of field goal range and possibly send the game into overtime, but you couldn't do it. So stop blaming Chad. It's not his fault. Steelers versus Vikings in Ireland. What looked like a Steelers blowout turned out to be a really competitive game, and Minnesota looked pretty brutal for the first three quarters, and then they finally got things going in the fourth quarter when they scored 15 unanswered points, got the ball back down by 3 to possibly send the game into overtime, but they vomited all over themselves to give Pittsburgh a 24-21 victory. The biggest stars for the Steelers' win was Aaron Rodgers, 200 passing yards, Kenneth Gainwell with 99 yards and 2 touchdowns, and DK Metcalf with 126 receiving yards and a touchdown. And shout out to the Steelers' defense, who had 7 sacks. Falcons versus Commanders. Atlanta had a huge win against Washington, and the biggest stars for the Falcons offense was Michael Penix with over 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, and Bijan Robinson, well, because he's Bijan Robinson. And as for Washington, Mariota's Washington Redskins, the Commanders, tried to do everything that they could to defeat Atlanta, but they couldn't do it, sealing the 34-27 victory over the Falcons. And this is really a big win for them after their shutout loss against the Panthers. So, congrats, Atlanta. Giants versus Chargers. The Giants stunned the Chargers at MetLife Stadium to give them their first win and giving the Chargers the first loss. And it was all caught on camera, as Jackson Dart made his first NFL start and threw for over 100 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown, and 1 rushing touchdown. And unfortunately for the Giants, Malik Neighbors tore his ACL and is going to miss the entire season. So, yeah, that's tough. And as for the Chargers, Justin Herbert had a frustrating day, who had 1 passing touchdown and 2 interceptions. And they tried to get into field goal range, but they didn't have any time, sealing the 21-18 win for the Giants. Texans versus Titans. Who would have saw this coming? The Texans finally got a win against the horrible Tennessee Titans, which, are you really even surprised? CJ Stroud had a really good game, which is not surprising considering it's against the frickin' Titans. But as for the Titans, it's the same old stuff. Cam Ward tried to do everything that he could to win, but his teammates are just pure garbage. And he also had a viral moment where he told the media that his team is ass. I mean, in his situation, I don't blame him. But anyways, congrats to the Texans on getting their first win. And as for the Titans, sucks a suck. Buccaneers versus Eagles. The Eagles hand the Buccaneers their first loss of the season, while the Eagles remain undefeated. And this game was all Eagles for the first half, but then the Buccaneers finally woke up in the second half and made it an 8-point game with less than 2 minutes left. And they got the ball, and on fourth down, Baker Mayfield decided to throw a freaking 3-yard pass to Cade Otton, and then he got tackled by a Eagles defender to give the Eagles a win. Like, really? On a 4th and 10, you throw a 3-yard pass? Just throw it deep. This game honestly could have gone into overtime if, well, that play was run properly, but we just couldn't do it. Thanks, Todd Bowles. But anyways, congrats, Philly, on the big win. And as for Tampa, it was a tough loss, but we are 3-1 right now and are first place in the NFC South, so we should be fine. Patriots versus Panthers. A big Patriots win against a terrible Panthers team at Gillette Stadium sounds about right, as New England demolished Carolina 42-13. And also, Patriots fans, please stop comparing Drake May to Tom Brady. Like, there will never be a Tom Brady, goddammit. Just because they play for the Patriots and Drake May has a really good throwing arm, that does not mean he's going to be the next Tom Brady. But anyways, as for Carolina, they had a frustrating day. And yeah, that's all I had to say. So, next. Bills versus Saints. This was a somewhat competitive game between the Bills and the Saints. I thought it was going to be a score of like 42-10 Buffalo or something, but I will give credit to New Orleans for keeping it competitive for the first 3 quarters. And then Buffalo realized that they're playing the Saints and decided to take the lead for good in a 31-19 victory. Josh Allen did what he does best and dominate at Highmark Stadium in Buffalo. And as for the Saints, they are 0-4. Spencer Rattler's yet to win an NFL game as a starter. And the Saints are going to be horrible for the near future. So, yeah, next. Lions versus Browns. The Motor City Kitties unsurprisingly dominated the helpless Cleveland Browns 34-10. And Detroit has done what they've been doing for the last, 2 to 3 years. They would do really well on offense, do really well on defense, and score on a punt return every once in a while. And that's what they did in this game. And as for the Browns, Joe Flacco had a really frustrating day, committing 2 interceptions, and now he lost his starting job to Dylan Gabriel. So, yeah, congrats to the Lions and Cleveland. At least they have a nice defense, so there is one positive, I guess. 49ers versus Jaguars. The Jaguars stunned the 49ers at San Fran in a 26-21 upset win. And I will give Jacksonville credit. They actually had a really good game offensively and defensively. And they even scored on a punt return, which is really incredible. But as for San Fran, it was a frustrating day, especially for Brock Purdy, who had 2 interceptions. And both of those interceptions were really, really ugly. I'm not ready to press the panic button for the Niners just yet. But if they end up losing a ton of games in the next, 4 weeks, then I think it's time to panic if you're a Niners fan. But as for the Jaguars, congrats on the huge win. Rams versus Colts. The Rams gave the Colts their first loss of the season, which I really didn't see that coming. I'm just kidding. I knew that was going to happen. But anyways, Matthew Stafford had a really good game. 375 passing yards and 3 touchdowns. And also, Puka Nacua is probably the best receiver in the league right now. He had himself one hell of a game. 13 receptions for 170 yards and a touchdown. But as for the Indiana Jones-led Colts, it was somewhat of a frustrating day, as Daniel Jones went back to his New York Giants self, committing 2 interceptions. And I know this was against the Rams defense, but still. But anyways, a 27-20 victory for the Rams, and their quote-unquote artificial crowd noise sounds about right. Raiders versus Bears. This was actually a really competitive game between the Bears and the Raiders. And the game famously ended where the Raiders were setting up their kicker for a game-winning field goal, but it was blocked by the Bears to give them the 25-24 victory. And now the Bears are sitting at 2-2, and Chicago has finally turned things around. As for the Raiders, it was a frustrating day, especially for Geno Smith, who threw 3 interceptions. Oh look, Ashton Genty actually got more carries this time, and he had himself one hell of a game. Gee, you could have given him more carries in the last 3 weeks, Vegas, but you don't listen to me. Chiefs versus Ravens. The Chiefs finally played a really good game for the first time since 2023. Did you know that they haven't scored over 35 points since 2023? Yeah, I know. It's been a while. But anyways, as for Mahomes, he had himself a really good game. 270 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Seems pretty good to me. And also, Xavier Worthy came back from injury, and he led the team in rushing and receiving. But as for the Ravens, they had himself a really frustrating game, especially Lamar Jackson, who couldn't get anything going for Baltimore's offense, and he left the game early with a knee injury, and he's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. And now they're going to rely on Cooper Rush. So, yeah, congrats to the Chiefs, I guess. Cowboys versus Packers on Sunday Night Football. The game ended in a tie? Why in the world did the game end in a tie? What the hell is this? And I know the NFL has counted ties for what feels like forever, but dude, it's 2025. Sports don't play for ties anymore. The NBA doesn't play for ties. The NHL doesn't play for ties, and the MLB sure as hell doesn't play for ties. But the NFL does? Like, I don't get it. Just keep playing until someone wins. It's not that hard. And personally, I blame Green Bay. Packers. You had 1 second left on the clock, deep in Dallas territory, and had an opportunity to score a game-winning touchdown, but you guys decided to score a game-tying field goal as the clock hit 0 for some freaking reason. I mean, this is not how the Micah Parsons revenge game should have ended. It should have ended with Green Bay getting a win, but instead you settle for a tie. What the hell? But as for the game itself, it was actually pretty good. Both quarterbacks played really good, and yeah, it was a really entertaining game, I must admit. So, yeah, next. Dolphins versus Jets on Monday Night Football. The Dolphins finally got a win this season, winning against the Jets 27-21. Tua, surprisingly, played an entire football game this season without turning the ball over. Isn't that crazy? But anyways, he had himself a really good game, and especially Darren Waller, who had 2 touchdowns. But unfortunately for Miami, Tyreek Hill suffered a knee injury and was carted off the field, and now he's going to be out for the year. And I hate Tyreek Hill with a passion, but I hate to see anybody injured, especially with athletes that I hate a lot. But as for the Jets, it was a really frustrating day, as they looked horrendous in the first 2 quarters, and then looked a little competent in the last 2 quarters, which is typical Jets. Still, I'm honestly surprised that there are actual Jets fans who would watch them suck every year and still put a smile on their face saying, I'm a Jets fan. I was born in New York, and I don't even like them or the Giants, as a matter of fact. But anyways, big win for the Dolphins. And finally, Broncos versus Bengals on Monday Night Football. The Bengals just suck without Joe Burrow. It's really that easy. Jake Browning, never play a snap for the Bengals ever again, because you are horrible. You keep overthrowing Jamar Chase that I literally wanted to punch my own TV. But anyways, as for the Broncos, they literally did all that they could to win against the helpless Bengals. And yeah, they just had themselves a really good game.